Welcome back to LUTE Labs. Last episode, we covered what LUTE is and why we built it. This time, we're taking a quick visual tour of the toolkit inside Unity. This is just enough to recognize your way around before you install anything and get more serious. At a glance, we'll cover LUTE and the Flow Engine, nodes and orders, maps and locations, and a general sense of how it all looks and feels once it's all put together. It's nothing too in-depth, just enough to get yourself situated and comfortable. Now let's jump in to the editor. So now we are in the Unity editor with LUTE installed and opened. We always recommend for first-time users of LUTE to check out the starter scenes. You can find this in the project folder called LUTE Starter Scenes and then Games. You can go through manually each of these folders and scenes, but we recommend using the level select scene, in which you can then be directed to the other scenes we have created in a more aesthetic and user-friendly manner. For now, we're going to use a basic scene that I've just created. In this scene is something you're most likely going to recognize immediately, a main camera with an input system attached. The input system here is important because it allows you to interact with the dialogue using the mouse and keyboard. Additionally, I have created a character object called Hippo. And there's a character here, as you can see, called Dr. Hippo, and we've given it one portrait. Essentially, a character is something you can use in dialogue systems, which has a name and a color for the name, and a series of or an array of portraits which you can then choose from when building dialogue orders. To create a new character, it's very simple. You just go to the toolbar at the top, under LUTE, create narrative character. This creates a simple object with the character component attached. The most important object here in the scene is the basic flow engine. The flow engine contains the nodes and orders that we discussed in the previous video. It's the central system in which your story or game is controlled. If your game doesn't have a basic flow engine, it essentially isn't really a LUTE game. Whilst I won't go over all the fields on the flow engine inspector, I will go over the three basics. The name, of course, which you can change as any basic Unity object. The description, which gives you a description, which is great for when using in group projects or when giving a demonstration to other people. And then the final field here, which is really important, called hide components. As I said, nodes and orders are contained on the flow engine itself. This means when you add any of these to the flow engine window, it adds as a new component to this object. You can imagine having a game with many nodes and many flowing dialogue systems and branching narratives that components can probably stack up to quite an excessive amount. Therefore, when rendering these components, Unity can get quite laggy. So we always recommend having hide components ticked and only really unticking it if you're quite serious or an advanced Unity user and want to really get into the nitty-gritty of the nodes or order components that are attached to this object. So this is just the inspector of the flow engine, but we really want to get a visual representation of what this looks like on the graph or the canvas. You can open this window in two different ways. First, you can go to the toolbar, under LUTE, and then Show Engine Window. Or you can click on the Flow Engine object in your scene, go under the inspector for the Flow Engine component, and press the Flow Engine or Open Flow Engine window. This opens a basic Unity GUI editor window. You can scale it, move it around, and dock it, just like any other GUI editor window in Unity. We always recommend docking the Flow Engine window so you can find it easily. You can see the name of the engine window appears at the top left, and if I added a simple description, such as simple description, it also appears on the window itself. The window features a toolbar. The toolbar allows you to add new nodes, gives you a basic node, starting block of a narrative engine, a slider, which allows you to zoom in and out of the graph or the canvas. The center window will focus the window around the nodes on the graph itself. The show map will of course show a map window in which you can then add locations, which we'll go over in a later date. You can then hide or show annotations. And annotations are simply comments or uh, labels or lines which you can add, which are great in group projects. And then clear annotations, which will delete all the annotations on the window. So use this with caution. You can add a basic label to your Flow Engine window by simply right-clicking anywhere on the graph and adding Add Label, just like so. The right-click context menu also has the ability to add new nodes, add custom nodes, and add other annotational lines, and then play, which actually will play your game from any given point, just like you would from the play button at the top here. So I've added a basic node using the toolbar, but as I mentioned, you can right-click anywhere on the graph and add a new node. When your project gets quite large and there are multiple nodes, you may want to use the right-click and drag to transpose the canvas to view multiple nodes and have groups of nodes in different places on the graph. A node is not just one action, as we've noted, it's a series of actions, a story point or a point in your game which has many actions. It's a component in which you could have lots of actions happening all at once. The basics of a node is a name. So in this case, we can just give it as node. A custom tint, so if you want to actually change the color of the node, you can. And some other fields which you won't go over right now. But another important field here is to talk about the activate by. So right now, this node won't be executed, but if we change this to game started, it would be executed. And we'll go over this in a moment's time. So, as I noted, a node typically contains a list of orders, and these orders are individual actions that are executed during runtime. To add a new order to a node, you simply press the plus icon here. You can scroll through all of the orders on the list, or you can search using the search bar here. Let a basic dialog order for now. Orders are typically grouped into themes, so in this case dialog is grouped into the narrative theme. When adding a new order, an order inspector window is created. Essentially this gives you the ability to add information about the order, which will then be used at runtime. The most basic attributes of the dialog order are the character, and we can use the drop down here to select the character we created at the beginning, and its portrait, which is only one, so we just chose the single portrait attached. You can see our portrait is shown here. We can add some basic text to the dialog order here, so we'll just add some basic text now. There is a myriad of other fields here for the dialog order, which we won't go over into too much detail now, but you can play around and see what they look like. What happens during runtime when this node is called is it will go through the list of orders, it will go through this first one here. Now there is no dialog box in the scene, so what happens is a dialog box is created at runtime, and this is what this order will do. It creates a dialog box at runtime and then populates it with this text and with this character. So let's play the game and see what happens. As you can see, nothing actually happened. But if I right click my node and press execute, we can see the text pops up with our character and our dialog box. You can see the text name isn't very visual, the character name isn't very visual because I've kept it as white. So if we stop playing the game, we go to our character and we change our character name color to something like red. And if we click the node again and we activate this node by game started, which then is reflected by the game started little tag here, this will be executed when the game starts. So let's play that again and see how that looks. The game starts, our character name is now red, and the dialog box is created with this order and populated with the fields that we've given it in the inspector. This is just a very basic outline of how the Flow Engine, nodes, and orders connect with event handlers and triggers. Hopefully this is enough to get you started, and as we already have discussed, you can see the demo scenes for a more in-depth version of this tutorial. So that's a quick tour of LUTE inside Unity. Next episode, we'll actually install LUTE and set up a project from scratch, so you can follow along for real. Thanks for watching LUTE Labs, and see you next time.